Hey, welcome back. This is Adam again. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at two different products. These are two backyard sheds, both from different companies. We're going to build them side by side and see what makes them different. The first one's from Backyard Discovery. They make several sizes and styles. The one we're building is the Ready Shed 8x8 Peak Shed. The second shed we'll build is the Handy Home Products Kingston model, and it's an 8x8 as well. If you only took a quick glance at these sheds, you may think that they were generally the same, but there are big differences between the two. So this video is not going to be a full tutorial on how to build each shed, but it is going to give you a good idea of what to expect should you order one of these kits. And I got to thank Backyard Discovery for sponsoring this video and making this video possible. The sheds from Backyard Discovery come with unpacking instructions. Just use an electric drill and the instructions will tell you which screws to undo first. There's not a lot of waste material here. All these walls of this crate are parts of the shed as well. Now what makes this kit unique is that it contains everything to complete the shed. That also helps in calculating the cost of the shed. There's not going to be any surprises. Another thing that makes it unique is much of this shed comes pre-assembled. The walls come in panels and they're all pre-framed. The doors are pre-hung as well, so that makes it really easy to put together. All the hardware that you'll need is going to be in this box. There's nothing you need to go out and buy. Here I'm getting ready to frame the floor. You can see all this wood has been pressure treated so it'll stand up to the rain and the snow. Another great feature of this shed is all the holes wherever possible are pre-drilled. All I have to do is insert these screws by hand and drill them in. All the hardware that they give you is actually really good quality, even down to the screws. It's nice to see that they didn't skimp anywhere. The floor frame and decking assemble very quickly, and then you can immediately start putting up the walls. And this goes even quicker. You put a few screws down into the floor frame and then screw the studs together. In just a few minutes, the side wall was up, and I can start on the front. This front panel goes in the same way as the sidewalls. Now we're going to get ready to put in the door panel, and you put these T-nuts in these pre-drilled holes. You just tap them in with a hammer. Here we're putting the door panel in place. And then you secure it with these bolts, and they supply you with the bits to tighten it. They left two screw holes open in the bottom hinges so you can mount it to the floor frame. And then the rest of the walls assemble just like the first. You quickly get the hang of this and it goes together very quick and easy. The last thing you'll do to secure the walls is add some screws around the bottom. Now we jump to the roof. You see the rafters come just like this. They're all pre-assembled. And you'll place them evenly over these studs. Again, you can't see it so well on video because the holes are small, but these pre-drilled holes really help. It makes the project go fast. Next you'll add the trim, the soffit, and the fascia. And I liked that they used cedar for this. They didn't skimp and use pine. They used a nice wood that'll better hold up to the weather. Next we add the wood to the roof. Just two panels that you need to attach on each side. Here I'm attaching the drip edge over the door and the vent covers. It's nice that they included vents on the front and the back because sheds can get very hot. Like I said before, everything that you'll need to finish this shed comes in the kit, and that includes the shingles. So all you have to do is follow the pattern that they give you in the instructions. You're going to start with the starter row, and that goes down there at the bottom. The shingles come in different bundles, and that's because they're pre-cut for you. You don't have to worry about cutting any of them. So once you get to the top of the shed, the excess of the shingle is going to flop over to the other side and then vice versa. After that, you nail on the ridge caps, and they're again all pre-cut. You work all the way down to the end of the peak. Now when you're buying your painting supplies, you can pick up a tube of roof sealer if you want to and dab it on top of these nails if you want to seal them. And that's it for the roof. I think it looks really good. And I was honestly surprised at how much work they went through to pre-cut all these shingles and make it easy to install. Now we're going to install the door hardware, and on one door we're going to install this keyed lock and handle. And on the other door, two spring latches. Give it a tap with the door closed, and that's going to put a mark on the floor. Then you drill a hole on the top and the bottom, and that's it. Also, they include an optional shelf for the inside. You can have two smaller shelves on the wall, or you can put them together and make a loft. So true to their word, you only needed a drill and a hammer to put this shed together, and it did go together very quickly. There was no hang-ups with it, and nothing was really confusing. The only part that I did have to adjust a little bit was that D-shaped piece on the lock rubbed a little bit against the weather stripping on the other door, so I had to sand that down a little bit so it didn't hit. But other than that, this shed went together flawlessly. They did a nice job. So I got more to say about this shed, and we'll talk about it at the end of the video. But let's jump to the Handy Home Products shed now, and then we'll compare the two. So as you'll notice, the packing to this shed is a lot smaller, and that's because it doesn't contain all the parts you'll need to finish the shed, and none of the components are really put together for you. Unlike the Backyard Discovery sheds, these walls don't come pre-framed. The doors are loosely put together, but you do still have to secure all the trim. There's no pre-drilled pilot holes either. Also, it doesn't include a lot of the screws and nails you're going to need. You'll need to buy all the roofing material and a lot of the flooring. Now, when you buy one of their sheds, it says you can buy one with or without the floor. But it was a bit confusing to me as to what the one with flooring actually contains. It looks like you're still going to have to buy flooring material if you buy the one with the flooring. So you're going to have to go back to the hardware store either way, because you still have to buy everything for the roof. Pick up nails and screws. Now, they're a bit vague on how many nails you need. They just say, this many boxes, but they don't say a box of how many. I suggest buying more 2x4s because there's some parts of the construction, in my opinion, that are lacking support. And so by the end of it, in my case, I spent $250+ to get everything I needed to complete this shed. So just know all of this going in. I'm starting with the floor frame, and this one requires more tools and a lot more time. And if at all possible, I would suggest using a framing nailer because it's going to speed things up. The downside of the framing nailer is that if you make any mistake, you can't undo it easily, especially the walls of the shed if you try to pry it apart. So I'm not going to get into all the details on how this shed's constructed, but here's one part about the design of this shed that really did bother me. Here's how they say you should lay out the studs for the floor, and in my opinion, that is just too weak. So what I suggest is you lay it out like this, and you'll have a much sturdier floor. Unfortunately, while I was building it, I did come across several errors in the manual that weren't so bad that they would have ruined the shed or anything, but it was inconvenient and it did waste some of my time. For instance, on this page, they say you need 2 of this board, but that's not true. You only need 1. There's also other errors where they tell you to nail into parts that you can't or shouldn't. Here, if you put nails in this spot, there's nothing behind it to hold the nails in. Something you have to look out for while building the shed: inspect the wood. If it looks like this, all warped and bent, do not use it. It will make the walls and parts of your shed warped and bent, which with this shed, there was about 3 pieces of wood that really needed to be replaced. Unlike the Ready shed, these rafters don't come pre-assembled. You have to make a jig. Here's a look at how some of the framing is done. This is the back wall. You have to make this kind of cross shape. After you make the frames for the walls, you can attach the wall board. A difference you'll notice is that the frame on this shed is made out of 2x3s, whereas Backyard Discovery shed uses 2x4s. I did have a little trouble here and there putting up the walls. There were some parts that just didn't want to fit. Then you assemble 4 trim end caps. These are easy to put crooked, so you want to make sure they're nice and straight and follow the roof. I had to shave a little bit off right here to make it straight. Next, I'm attaching the rafters, and they supply you with these screws to do it, but they're too weak. I broke a lot of them while using the drill, so I would suggest buying some good quality screws and not use these at all because they break way too often. After the rafters, I could attach the wood to the roof. And then the fascia, which this whole part I felt was a little sloppy. You could see that there's a gap here, and I don't like how this end cap was constructed. I think they could have done a better job on it. Now, when it comes to the doors, it's not nearly as simple as the Backyard Discovery shed. You use these beams to help you align it up. Now, there's a ton of screws that go into this, and all this trim on the door, like I said before, isn't really attached. You got to follow it up with screws from the back, and they tend to push the trim away from the door, so it's a little awkward trying to screw those in securely. However, the hinges are nice. They are full length and they're galvanized. Also, they give you this metal threshold to protect the edge of the step, which I thought was pretty nice too. They give you 2 giant pieces of wood to use as weather stripping for the doors, but because this is a part of the door that you grab a lot, this wood is just too rough and unpleasant to touch. I would suggest buying a different piece of wood and using that instead. This shed only comes with a padlock latch and 1 small spring latch. The problem is you need 2 latches. Here's what happens to the bottom of the door. It just is not secure. This shed should come with 2 latches. I don't know why they didn't put in a second one. Now, laying the roof for this shed basically goes on the same way, but the big difference is you have to buy all of your own shingles and they don't come pre-cut. So it does add a lot of time to the project. And this shed is done. Again, both sheds are primed, but you'll need to do your own caulking and painting. So now that both sheds are put together, let's talk about some of the differences between them. First thing we'll talk about is the quality of materials. On the Backyard Discovery shed, none of the wood was warped or chipped. They used 2x4s, not 2x3s, so the walls are stronger. Also, they use cedar trim, not pine, so it holds up longer. Their screws and hardware are much better. The lock and the key comes with it. They have 2 latches, and those are better. Also, something strange that I wasn't expecting, the walls are thicker. Handy Home Products, their walls measured 5/16 of an inch thick, whereas Backyard Discovery, theirs are 3/8 inch thick. Now let's talk about the features. Backyard Discovery has 2 pre-cut vents. Mandatory, you gotta have vents in your shed. It's gonna get way too hot without them. They include a shelf. They have pre-drilled holes. You don't need to cut any piece of wood or shingles. And all the major components are pre-built. Another huge difference is the time it takes. I think most people could build the Backyard Discovery shed in 1 day, whereas the Handy Home shed takes 2 to 3 days minimum. Unfortunately, the Handy Home products didn't have any of those features, but they did have a step plate. So my final thoughts on the Handy Home shed, there was mistakes in the instructions, and you do need a lot more construction skill to put together. It's not so simple. I needed a lot more tools to complete it. It takes much, much longer to complete this shed. You'll need to buy a lot of stuff, and it's hard to calculate the final price of the shed due to that fact. And there were parts here and there that just looked a bit sloppy to me. It was just not nice of a finish. Like here, there's an exposed edge of the wall panel. Here, there's gaps, and the plywood corners just aren't going to look that nice even when they're painted. And my final thoughts on the Backyard Discovery shed, I really like the pre-drilled holes, and you don't have to go back to the store and buy anything. You can really tell that they cared about the quality of this product and wanted it to be very easy for a person with minimal skill level to be able to complete. I mean, you just have to look at how many tools you need, which is basically a drill and a hammer, and that's all it takes to finish the shed. And I think the overall look of the shed is a bit more polished. They have trim that wraps around the full corner. Things like that make it look nicer, especially close up. And because the kit contains everything you need to complete the shed, it's really easy to calculate the price. There's nothing hidden that's going to show up later on that you're going to have to buy. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. I will put all of the links to these sheds in the video description. You can check them out. So search below and you'll be able to get more information about these. Again, thanks guys for watching. Take care and have an awesome day.